All right, and welcome to our review of the movie Warcraft. Josh, you were the first one to see it. Why don't you tell us what you thought?
Well, I thought overall it did a good job. Personally, I felt it stuck to the story really well, and I mean the action was great. Overall, enjoyable experience. I don't know what else to say about it, but I mean, I know there are some people in this room that don't.
Well, there will be stuff to say about it because there's going to be some counterpoints, and mine is that the movie wasn't good. There was a lot that was wrong with the movie.
He's not wrong. That is a counterpoint.
Yeah, there was a lot that went on in this movie. Maybe it's because I don't know the story, but it was very disjointed, very hard to follow. Not so much hard to follow, just they didn't explain things enough. There wasn't enough backstory to the characters, despite the amount of dialogue that there was in this movie. That's what I found with it.
No, I agree with you. Like, following the flow of the story was fine, but things like motivations and reasons for personality traits or shifts in loyalties, those weren't explored enough. You could tell what was going on, you know. There's an impending problem. People are, finding solutions. Like, that's fine to follow. It's just reasons why we're following it were a little bit lacking.
They were definitely not there for somebody who doesn't know the story, the beginning stories of Warcraft. My point is,
it started with World of Warcraft, right?
No, it did not. Did I say World of Warcraft? Because I would probably screw that up a couple times.
You actually didn't. So
you for once you were right.
Okay, awesome. So it did not start with World of Warcraft, despite the fact that I thought it was going to right at the beginning of the movie. Because they had the big hammer and the big shield. I thought it was the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. Then it was completely ruined for me. It went right to the beginning. So I didn't know the story. The one thing I really didn't like about how everything flowed was how fast and easily friendships were made. Like with the mage and with the main character, Lothar. And the mage, was Khadgar. Their friendship was awkward, kind of quirky.
They didn't really like each other a lot of the time.
But it really did feel unnatural. Like, it was just like, hey, we just met, we're going to have a love-hate relationship.
Exactly. And it's just, there's a respect immediately without proving yourself whatsoever.
I was actually more okay with that. The problem I had with relationships was Garona's relationship. That was just like, it made no sense.
Well, the thing is, they made a lot of changes to the lore. I think most of
Blizzard never does that.
I think most of them are pretty acceptable, partly because this is lore that had already been changed for the most part by Blizzard. So for them to change, originally Garona, for example, was half human, half orc. Okay. Then they basically retconned the whole thing so that she's half Draenei, half orc. And now she's half human, half orc again. So they made a lot of weird changes like that were kind of in line with the weird changes they normally make. I would have to say that as much as it was inconsistent, it was kind of consistent with the way Blizzard makes changes. It really felt like Blizzard film. Now, to me, that's a plus.
Before we get into more lore, because I am a little bit more interested in that, and just to see how you perceived it, what did you think of the movie just overall?
No, sir.
No?
Didn't like it.
You did not like it as well?
It was okay. It had its highlights. There was parts that were enjoyable, but there was so many things that just stood out to me. I, like you, did play many years of World of Warcraft, not nearly as many as these guys.
Yeah.
But I didn't play Warcraft before it, and I still had to get explanations like, who is this person? What is this motivation? And I really did feel like the movie is definitely a love letter to the fans.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're trying to build a franchise, which I can only imagine going back to the original Warcraft story, is the idea that you can now do a series of films that move forward through the timeline. If you're trying to build a new audience, maybe not necessarily of your diehard World of Warcraft fans, who are, of course, going to buy whatever into it and help support it, it didn't really do a good job of that. A lot of people would go in there who don't know the lore, even less than myself, and would be lost and would not have motivation to come back for a sequel or a trilogy or however many movies they end up making. And I think that was a big misstep.
I think the problem there is that they overcomplicated what honestly is a fairly simple story.
It really could have been a simple story.
Yeah, the basis of it is Gul'dan's the bad guy. He's effectively corrupting his world, and he's moving in to corrupt this new world. And
plays it off like he's going to save them.
And people from both sides, from the orcs and the humans, sort of realize this, and some of them band together to stop him. That's something that I think everyone did get.
Yeah.
And that is really all you needed to understand. I think the confusion doesn't come from the complexities behind it, because there's way more little nitpicky things and complex stuff in the background that they didn't even touch on. But even what they did, there wasn't enough time to do it, and it looks complicated. It looks too complicated.
Well, I think that we're both kind of right in that regard. The movie could have been a lot simpler. If they were going to go more complicated, they should have gone the full 9 yards, and they just kind of went halfway there. They added the complication, but not the explanation to it. So it's like, if you had just stayed at the simple story, invading orcs, there's an immediate threat, react, then it would have worked, but you added the allusion to a bunch of different things, relationships, the fell, the bloodlust, which was never actually shown in the movie and might not have even been a factor, but you went halfway there, and without that going all the way there, you developed the complexity and didn't explain it, and that's the problem. Just keep it simple.
They also tried to tell two stories at the same time, which was
sometimes
another problem with the complexity, is that you're trying to tell the human story and the orc story.
Yeah.
They probably could have gotten away with just doing the human side of the story. Have the first chunk of the movie, don't try and humanize the orcs right from the start. Have the orcs come in and be the brutal force that they are, and then humanize them later on.
Well, the whole promotion of this movie was for the Horde or for the Alliance, so you had to make the Horde likable, and that's why they started humanizing them immediately. Like, you had Duratan and you had Lothar. They were the parallels of each other, human and orc aspects. So that's why I feel they probably did that part of it.
But see, that part is what threw me off, because if, Duratan is clearly not a bad person or right? Why did it take that long to figure out what's going on? Like, right away you should have known, like, Duratan flat out, or the villain, Gul'dan. These names are going to throw me off.
Not just you. Everybody who doesn't know this game is going to be so thrown off with these names.
Gul'dan immediately is saying, like, the first scene in the movie, death brings life to the gate, and you see him kill all of these Draenei who are in cages, and then they go into the portal to do the same thing to the humans. It's like, if you realize that that's a bad thing to do, you should have realized it when you captured and killed an entire race of the Draenei. Right? So if you don't go into things like the bloodlust, which I know of from knowing the game, to explain that they were driven with rage, almost like a bull who sees red, right? Then you're humanizing them. It's like, okay, well, the complete genocide of one race was okay, but now we're going to sympathize with the genocide of the humans. Like, that part, it didn't make sense to me. Exactly like we said.
Yeah.
He changes his side.
Except, to be perfectly honest, there's no point where he really sympathizes with the humans.
He was more worried about
his own people moving into a new world, and it seemed like he didn't really realize that everywhere Gul'dan went, it was being corrupted until partway through the film. So I think that was sort of he didn't really get it until then. I don't think he really cares that much about the humans, to be perfectly honest.
Fair enough, but I mean, like, it was very, like, it was one quick scene, and it seemed so easily lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. Now, there was some good things in the movie, and I'm going to go right to probably some of the cinematics and CGI that the movie had. Those were enjoyable. The fight scenes, albeit I feel there weren't too many of them, they were pretty good. They weren't the best you've ever seen, but they were serviceable for a movie like this.
The CGI was fantastic, but it did take me a little bit to get into it.
Like, looking at the orc initially.
And when they first start the movie and you see Duratan and Draka.
Yeah.
something about them doesn't sit right. And then eventually your brain just accepts it, like, stepping into a hot bath. Initially, you're like, oh, that's hot, and then your body adjusts to it. Initially, I was watching it, I'm like, it's smooth, it's technically sound, but something about it sticks out like a sore thumb. And then maybe 10, 15 minutes into the movie, that just kind of escaped me, and it didn't bother me as much. And that's when I started to really appreciate it. Like, when you saw the wolves for the first time that the orcs were riding on, I thought they were done really well, and just did a fantastic job of the CGI. But it was something that, like, it was almost like it was an acquired taste. Like, it didn't right away look good. And eventually it started to look good.
I really had to think of it like an animated movie. Like, I just had to watch it like, okay, this is, it's all CGI, there's no live actors, just pretend like that for me to really enjoy it.
It should have been an all CGI movie.
It probably should have.
How many times in the past have we talked about Blizzard's ability to do cutscenes in their video games?
Oh, they're phenomenal.
Exactly.
Some of the best in the gaming industry.
The voice acting for the orcs was quite good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I found that a lot of the acting, and we'll get into casting in a bit, what fell flat. If that was, again, humans that were done in CGI, where the voice actors could have just focused on that, I think that would have actually worked out better.
It would have been better, but it would have made the hardcore fans angry because they've asked for the live CGI action movie for so long now. But you got me thinking about an interesting point, is that this movie, for me, one of the main problems as well was that it couldn't find its identity. You had to watch it like a cartoon, but it tried to have adult themes in some aspects, and it shuffled from one thing to another. It's like, are you a cartoon? Are you just going to be the live CGI movie that you're supposed to be, or do you want to have these adult themes to it as well? All three things they tried to put in, and it did not blend whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much of a problem with mixing adult themes with sort of cartoony themes. That's kind of a bit of a World of Warcraft type thing. I think the problem is they tried to do serious and humor as separate things. Mm-hmm. And it made it so that it just felt unnatural because it would bounce from one to the other.
Yeah,
they're trying to make a joke and then it's a serious moment.
Yeah.
But neither of them really fit. Like, there should have been much better flow with that sort of thing. And instead, you could tell when they were trying to make a joke, and most of the time it just didn't fit.
It fell flat, absolutely.
Because it felt unnatural. When they did something natural, and most of the time when they did something natural, it was very much a fan service moment. Like with the guy getting sheeped, or the Murloc under the bridge. And the best part about things like those is that they didn't take anything away from the film. They took seconds to do. They were funny. They appealed to the fans. And they were something that anyone could understand.
They weren't like the moments like, hey, look at this joke now.
Yeah,
like it just happened, right? Like,
the just kind of flew through it.
The campfire scene was nice, right? Because there was like a bit of a conversation, and the humor came that Garona, didn't really have much of a sense of humor and didn't realize what she was saying was funny to them, right?
She's an orc.
It was more of a natural one rather than like the shoehorned, okay, we're now going to divide the tension by making this joke and shoehorn it in there.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, like, Blizzard has always been campy.
Yes.
It's always had jokes and pop culture references and humor, but as cheesy as it was, it didn't feel out of place.
The dialogue was really cheesy for me, and that was hard to get over.
They should have put so much more focus on the battles instead.
I think it should have been cheesier, to be honest.
Yeah, so
I think if it had been cheesier, you wouldn't have had an identity crisis. It would have just felt like cheesy dialogue.
And I would have been fine with
that's just it. One or the other.
You have to be able to either blend it like you said, because they did not do that, or just stick to something. That's why I bring up the identity of the movie, because it didn't seem to know where it wanted to be.
One point I will make on CGI, again, is that it's one of the best movies I've seen where they've mixed the CGI and the live actors. It actually worked decently. It wasn't too jarring seeing the two of them on the screen at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas like some of the older movies you've seen where that it's like you can really tell what's CGI and what's not CGI.
Yeah.
And this one just felt a little bit better.
I think it works fantastically for the orcs too, over trying to use real people as orcs.
Yeah.
Because the orcs were huge and they were very threatening.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep. Oh, when he picks up the horse and just
Picks
tucks
up a
it?
horse.
Like, I mean, like,
Just
you would not be able to do that very well with a live
grabs
actor.
a griffin and just power bombs him down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was acknowledgement from Lothar, the human, right at the beginning. It's like, they don't know anything about the orcs, but he just tells right away, these guys are menacing and very strong. You can't fight them with brute strength.
You have to be smarter.
Exactly.
My big issue, and we're talking about the positives of the CGI.
Yeah.
When it came to the visuals, and you guys have all heard me gripe about this, everything was too perfect.
Like
Even
Everything in Stormwind was quite perfect.
everything was too perfect. Everything
I
in the
don't agree
movie,
with that.
even the imperfections were perfect. Like, you say only in Stormwind, but they go to Karazhan, and there's an ancient library, and there's no dust, there's no books out of place. It's perfect. They go to an inn in Goldshire, and you see the brick walls, and, you know, there's an offset for the bricks, but there's no, like, divots in it. There's no dust built. Like, are they really dusting every brick every day all the time? All of the armor, you know, it's supposed to be a time of peace, so I get that it's polished up and it's not going to be as tarnished, but they're not practicing. No robes are frayed. You know, you don't have to be in combat for a mage's robes to just get seasoned and aged. And the one big one that really stood out to me, and it stood out to me every time, is Garona's teeth were perfect. What kind of dental care they got? Like, perfect, pearly, white, straight teeth.
She was always, though, a perfect orc. That was why she stood out, because she was completely unlike the rest of the orcs. She looked perfect. Like, if you've actually seen anything on her, she actually looks much more perfect than she did in the film. Like, in the film, her hair was all frizzy. It looked a little more orc-like. And that, in the games and the comics and pretty much everything else, she has straight pigtails.
That doesn't excuse everything in the movie. No. I mean, even Durotan, his tusk was chipped. And it was a straight chip. If you have something that hits you with enough force to chip your tusk, it's not going to be a clean break. There should be some jaggedness to it.
Unless he files it down.
Now, I
didn't remember that scene where he sat down with his pedicure kit and just started to file his tusk.
I don't remember the scene where it gets chipped either.
This is the thing. You watch so many fantasy movies and shows, and I'm not saying that they're not like, they don't clean themselves, but, you know, without modern technology, you are going to be a little bit grimier if you're, say, a scout that's out in the field all the time.
Yes.
You're not going to be perfectly clean.
Now, I do want to bring up, because this movie, Duncan Jones, really did follow its previous predecessors for epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings and even Game of Thrones. So, yes, they should have had more elements of dirt, dings, and things like that. The one thing I'm not going to blame Warcraft for is the teeth, because across the board in any epic fantasy, their teeth are perfectly fine. Like in Game of Thrones, from Jaime Lannister to Yoren, who was with the Night's Watch, who is a low commoner, his teeth were perfect as well.
Especially a female love interest. Like, how many movies can you name where the female love interest doesn't have perfect teeth?
Yeah, so that one I'm not going to blame on Warcraft, because for some reason in Hollywood, you don't, unless you are the scumbag and you have a small scene, you're going to have perfect teeth. That's just the way it is.
Like
but yes, dirt, grime, dings, more blood, and just...
There's a cup on Medivh's table. It's like a clay cup, and there's no scratches on it, no chips. It's not just one thing. Everything is always perfect. Even the
stonework, everything.
Even the jails that they have multiple scenes in are clean.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, who's cleaning these prisoner cells?
Yeah, more detail into those things. I absolutely agree with you.
It's not like there was a lack of detail, because the armor that was in perfect, pristine condition had great, imagery on it, great rivets in it.
It had the Warcraft style. It definitely had that style.
It just took me out of the movie.
Yeah, it was a little bit jarring just seeing, that attention to detail with the lack of attention to detail at the same time.
It's quite impressive how polarizing this movie really was for me, because while the story was basic and somewhat easy to follow. You want the backstories and everything like that. But one thing the movie did great for me was set up the sequel. I put it in my head, and the promising scenes that could happen in the next movie, it's really intriguing.
They could have set up like 3 movies with this. Like,
yeah.
If they go different routes with the storylines, there's a few different ways they could go with sequels.
Because it ended well. I think it ended well.
I did bash the imagery a little bit, but I do want to mention, and you guys were really fond of it, when they did do things like the top-down view.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, they had some scenes where they did top-down views, like in the RTS.
Yeah.
And it looked fantastic.
And a bit of a throwback.
And each little section that was getting overtaken was a different color.
Yeah.
And that was a nice, cool little thing as well.
because the one was like on fire, so it was red.
And then you had the green one and the purple one and everything, so that was pretty cool.
And you had your great Lord of the Rings style panning shots of Dunmoreau and Stormwind. And you had a lot of scenes and a lot of places that looked almost exactly like they did in the games. And that, for any fan, is just a fantastic thing to see. When, you know what? You can say that it felt like a love letter to the fans. Mm-hmm. How many times have you even complained about game to movies where they seem to completely disregard the fans? Like Silent Hill.
Yeah.
I think that if there's a fault that's okay to have, it's aiming a movie at the people who actually already are interested in it.
Okay, but right now that's about 5 million people. That's enough to not. That's not enough to make your budget of 160 million.
China alone already.
Yes.
10 million people. There's a reason. Well, there's a reason why it did so well in China.
Okay, but let's say this movie didn't go to China and it was supposed to be based on its domestic value. This movie miraculously failed because of the bad storytelling.
See, I always felt that Warcraft would make just a good generic fantasy movie that fans as well as non-fans alike could enjoy. Because in all actuality, it's just a solid fantasy setting.
Yeah.
And my issue with movies like Silent Hill isn't that they don't do the story justice so much as that they try to replicate the story and don't. If you're just going to go off the reserve and make up a story in that universe, I don't find that as jarring as when you try to replicate it and do a bad job of it.
Yeah, I think it just honestly goes back to what you and I were discussing about the balance in the movie and the identity of it. Because you can't really rely on the 5 million people that you have right now. You want to be able to reach a broader audience. I love the fact that they really did the fans justice with this movie.
Absolutely.
It is 100%, the perfect saying is, this is a love letter to the fans. So for somebody who loves the lore, that's great for you. I like the lore, but I didn't know the beginning stuff. Right? I'm looking at the movie right now, and it looks like a disjointed mess that has potential still. So it's one of those weird things. I appreciate the fact that they really did go to the fans, though. I'm not going to take that away from it. But they needed to add more elements to bring more people into the movie and enjoy the story. Like, the names are complex, which is something Lord of the Rings even cured in some regard.
Really, a Game of Thrones fan saying the names are complex?
No, these names are complex. The names in Game of Thrones, there's just a lot of names in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's the problem. There's just a lot more to follow. But... Sorry.
I'd love to touch on the casting a little bit, though, because I'm a big fan of Ben Foster. And aside from him going into this movie, I really didn't know many of the actors. So I didn't really have too many expectations. And I gotta say, I was really disappointed.
Now, Ben Foster played Medivh, right?
Yes. And, I'm a big fan of him. I've liked his movies in the past, but I really didn't like him too much. I really wanted to like Lothar. I thought that there was potential there. Mm-hmm. The actor seems to do a good job, but unfortunately the source material he had to work with, the scripting wasn't fantastic. But none of the casting really, even the King Lane,
he was awkward.
Didn't really look like royalty to me, or a warrior, or just I was like, who put Pau Gasol in a crown and a beard? Like, I don't understand what's going on here.
Like, I saw Lothar, and I was like, okay, so he's my Aragorn. That's who I'm supposed to follow and love, right? Because he has that look.
They really did do that with his character for some reason.
They followed the tropes, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just we're going to put this guy.
Some
in this
of it was very
category.
confusing, though. The casting choices, the changes, the biggest lore changes in the movie revolved around the character relations, and in turn on the characters, especially Garona. But even the other ones were quite off, and it felt like they just took that. They tried to fit something. They tried to fit a square piece where a circle piece should go.
Well, that's why I felt that the best casting was the voice casting for the CGI characters.
Yeah.
You're not wrong there. As far as the human aspect of it, Ben Schnetzer, who played Khadgar, he was the mage. He was the highlight of the human acting for me. He did a really good job being the one who got crapped on, essentially. He took it all in really good stride. His dialogue sounded very clean as opposed to everybody else's that sounded like they had marbles in their mouth or something. I had a hard time picking up a lot of the dialogue with some human characters too, let alone the orcs. So he was my human highlights of the movie.
They definitely changed the personality the least with Khadgar.
Okay.
He's a little cheesy in the film, and he's pretty cheesy in the game. But he's a very important character, and I definitely
I did
feel
grab
like
that from this movie that he is going to have a lot of importance
They
in
centered
the
it a lot around him,
Khadgar
for sure.
was definitely probably the highlight of the humans. The nice thing about the orcs is that they didn't change too much, and it showed because all these relationships in the orc world were already established. They're tried and tested, and it looked like that in the film.
Yeah,
Man, if you want to talk about relationships, though, and I think you might have been about to say the same thing, the love story in this movie should not have been there.
Oh, it's
No,
awful.
it was just something that they said, I think we need to have love in here, so let's just put it sharply in a particular scene after a lot of grief. Immediately after grief that happens in the movie with Lothar, they just, not organically whatsoever, it just punches you in the face. Oh, there's a love story here?
I think again it goes back to the tropes.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, how many movies have we seen it where the hero falls for the slave who's been freed, the turncoat, the one who's seeking for a home? It's these two pieces go together because we've been conditioned over a series of generations of fantasy movies to know that these two go together, but we're not actually going to put in the effort to do it. We're just going to put them together. And that, it is honestly, you could have spent the time that you developed that relationship, because they did a little bit of it, and put it into more important things.
Yeah, the love story, absolutely. I think we've all agreed on that one and said that it should have not been there. It really screamed the Liv Tyler Aragorn, just the face touching and everything. The way that it happened, it was just such a trope and nasty. I hated
I
it.
found that scene odd, and I mean, if anybody's watching this, they probably already saw the movie, where she starts kissing up on him, and he's in the middle of still going through his mourning, and it's just
yes, immediately.
He's not even done his sentence.
It was
Calm down.
It was so
That's how
off-putting.
orcs roll.
That's how half-orcs roll.
It was so off-putting, but okay. And that would have been fine if they explained that in the dialogue, that orcs are like that. Then it would have made sense. Right now, it just doesn't.
No. It was bad. Basically, I don't think we really need to harp on individual scenes, because I think we all agree that the relationships were pretty bad across the board.
Absolutely.
Which is why they could have replaced that with just more combat.
Yes.
I think they should have.
They really should have.
I think that the pacing, between combat and non-combat stuff, was really good. The problem wasn't the pacing; it was the fact that the non-combat parts were pretty uninteresting.
They were dull. Yes.
Yeah.
If they were more interesting, though, it would have flowed beautifully.
Yeah.
Because there was quite a bit of combat. They did go back and forth and back and forth. It's not like a lot of films where you see huge build-up the entire time and then one fight at the end.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a major problem in sort of action-ish
A lot of fantasy
films.
movies in general.
Fantasy
Probably
films,
just
stuff
wanted
like
more
that.
combat.
This was great for the pacing part, but they did fall weak.
But because they wanted you to feel the drama, but they ended scenes so abruptly before they even built that in you to try to process, how am I supposed to take this? It's right on to the next scene, and it's just another dialogue scene where
And it
they
felt
don't
like-
explain much at all.
And it felt like it didn't need the drama. Really, it's not... Warcraft isn't a drama thing.
no, but they tried to add
It's
it.
a battle thing.
Absolutely, I agree.
You focus on the fact that there is a threat, whether it's the orcs or Gul'dan or whatever you want to focus on, and people have to stop it. And that's all you really need. You don't need all these weird little relationships and love interests and stuff like those. So I think they should have taken those types of things out.
Yeah.
Now, is it okay if I ask a question before we do our scores?
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially in particular with you two. One thing that we all hate about movies is if they're going to follow lore, they butcher it. In this case, I know there were some changes, but did they butcher the lore, or did they do it pretty good justice?
I don't think they butchered it. I really think they made some changes, and some were good and some were bad. But overall, they stuck to the main storyline of what was there already. The source material is actually quite close.
I think that Blizzard has set its own sort of butchering limits on everything. Blizzard really has a wide range of what's acceptable, and I do think the movie falls within it. It definitely isn't it isn't anything I've seen before in the lore. So in that sense, I guess, yes, they did butcher it, but they butchered it acceptably.
I'm sure you've been more than disappointed with other butchering they've done in the past.
I'm going to be honest, what excited me wasn't so much the butchering of the terrible relations and all those things, because those weren't interesting anyways. What I really liked was them getting the feel of the places they went to.
They went to two places. Ironforge and Stormwind. The screen told me.
Karazhan.
Oh, they went to Elwyn Forest.
Didn't say it on the screen, I don't know.
But being able to capture those things, all the little things like the Murloc, the sheeping, things like that, the way his griffin goes into the exact same place you go into Stormwind when you're arriving on a griffin. Things like those were perfect. And I absolutely loved the way the combat was done. Not just for the fact that it was great combat with great effects and the sound was fantastic in the combat, but the fact that it really did feel like Warcraft combat.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they may not have captured Warcraft outside of combat, but when they were doing those parts, they captured it beautifully. Like, I couldn't really be much happier with what they did in that sense.
Okay, awesome. Any highlight points that you guys want to do before we do our scores?
I really enjoyed the final battle. I think the final battle was probably one of the best things they did. Just seeing like groups of humans and orcs fighting each other, and even like the key orcs, standing out a little bit more, or like the moment when Lothar ends up fighting Black Hand.
Yeah,
like I really enjoyed that part of the movie. So the whole ending sequence was great.
Yeah, mine was the battle between Daratan and Gul'dan.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that one the most out of all the combat scenes in the movie.
To be honest, I enjoyed Gul'dan just in general.
Okay.
Yes.
I felt like they really captured the kind of orc that he is and the reason why he's such a threat. And I like the way that he had his dominant points, but he also had his points where he sort of lost his temper and screwed up. Like when he cheats and stuff like that in the battle.
I think my favorite part for Gul'dan, though, is when he's just sitting talking to, I think it's Ogrim, and he's just like drawing the life out of the human and eating it, and just like slowly, and then eventually he kills the guy, right? But it's just like, it's almost like he's smoking a cigarette. He's just like enjoying this. It really built the bad guy for me. I enjoyed that.
The one true point of comedy in that movie, and that was it right there.
I love that they built him up as a real threat. And the fact that they built him up in a way that he's going to be the villain continuing on. Like, of all the bad build-ups they had for some of the other characters, I think they did Gul'dan perfectly.
Yeah.
Anything for you?
I really liked the first battle in, I think it was Elwyn Forest. They didn't tell me.
The one with the wolves?
The one with the wolves.
That was Elwyn Forest.
Well, the thing is, if you were going to put the locations on the bottom, do it for all the locations.
With that particular one, they did it on the map. They moved the map in and panned into Elwyn Forest.
It was so weird.
It was awkward.
Like Ironforge on the bottom, then Stormwind, and then none of the other locations.
Yeah.
But I thought that battle was really well done. Partially because I thought that the CGI on the wolves was some of my favorite of it, but that battle also had some spell effects, which they did a great job with. Mm-hmm. It had a nice, it was the introduction battle, like they hadn't seen each other before, they had to feel each other out. There was a horse squishing a guy into a tree. It was a really good battle, and that was the highlight for me.
Awesome.
Okay. So battle scenes were all our highlights.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? When people died...
Technically, Gul'dan in general was
Yeah.
his.
Yeah.
When people died, they died great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Do you want to do a
Sure,
score?
I'll start it up. I am going to go with a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
I'm giving it that middle ground. I thought the movie overall was mediocre, but I enjoyed it. You know, I would probably see it again. So, yeah, it's a good movie. Maybe not for everyone.
So, despite its battle scenes and CGI, which I thought were good, and, you know, not to say that there wasn't good things in this movie, I am going to give it a 3 out of 10 because the story, the dialogue, the cheesiness, the lack of identity, everything made the combat seem not worthwhile. It was a pain to watch the movie throughout. I found myself looking away every once in a while, getting bored, and that's not how you want a movie to draw you in. So, despite having battle scenes, that's great. Have a coherent and fun story with it as well.
I enjoyed the movie. There was a few parts that were a little boring to me, but for the most part, I was entertained throughout. I definitely love the combat parts and a lot of those parts where they weren't just talking effectively. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I really like how they kept the fans in mind. Because definitely, I mean, when you talk about game to movie adaptations, it's almost completely bad across the board. And a large part of it is that the movies have nothing to do with the games. I feel like they've done that, and I'm actually really excited to see the next one.
Yeah.
I'd watch the movie again, so I can't say that I was disappointed. I give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I give it a 4 out of 10.
Why?
I think we've talked about it for almost half an hour now. Honestly, there was, again, it's a love letter to the fans.
Yep.
I probably enjoy World of Warcraft more than I enjoyed this movie, but it's like I don't want to feel like I have to have an encyclopedia of the lore beside me to fully understand the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a lot of parts where I had to ask Josh and Alex, like, who's this character's motivation and what was the backstory to that?
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to get everything out of the movie by watching the start to the end of the movie. And as much as there was, some good CGI parts, the sound, which we barely touched on, was fantastic. Like when Orgrim hit a guy with a hammer, it sounded like bone crunching
Nice
good,
thud,
right?
yeah.
But the sound shouldn't be a highlight for me. No. It should be a good emphasis, but other things should be the highlight. And there was parts where I honestly was looking at my phone, checking the time, because it was like, okay, if you're not going to get to another battle, you've lost my interest. And, I will watch the sequels because I am enough of a fan. I did play like 5 years of World of Warcraft that, I am interested in it, but I do find it difficult to recommend the movie, especially to those people who are not fans.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't think that they'll enjoy it. So, as such, it's a below average movie for me, and I'll watch sequels, but I probably wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah. Now, would you say this is your favorite game adaptation movie so far?
After Resident Evil 1 and 2, maybe.
Okay.
I'd say it's around that area.
Awesome.
Super Mario Brothers.
No, never.
But the thing is, you have a very limited of movies which I'd even consider better than acceptable there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say it's up there.
It's the best 2-hour Blizzard cinematic ever.
I don't even know about that. Not for me, man.
If the Blizzard team that does the cinematics in the game did a 2-hour cutscene, I guarantee you I would enjoy it.
If they did their own Advent Children, that would be great. I would be down for that.
There you have it. Overall, a generally less than favorable review, but it is what it is.
Yep.
Let us know, guys, what you think, and we'll see you guys next time.
Take care.
Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.